One. Thank you so much for joining us for session 5. I cannot believe this is now our 6th month of hosting our Fostering Potential series with our wonderful partners. We're going to welcome Andrea Summers and her team from the EPSEA here in Central Ohio.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm with the Junior League of Columbus. And this slide goes over some of our goals for the series, which is to discuss policies and best practices, to center lived experiences, to connect policy and practice, and to leave our audience with usable ideas and processes for supporting students in foster care. We're going to briefly introduce the organizations that are convening this series. Our organization in Columbus has a program called the Bridging the Gap program, which stands for Guide, Advocate, and Provide. So we have a guide program which partners with Franklin County Children's Services to provide life skills classes for youth aging out of the system. And then this is a part of our advocacy work. We also do a project provide where we provide such as an apartment in a suitcase program.
Action Ohio stands for Alumni of Care, Together Improving Outcomes Now. The organization is really designed to uplift the voices of youth and really give people who were in foster care when they were young to have a part in helping to improve the system now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brianna, and I am the Policy Associate for the Children's Defense Fund Ohio. We always say our mission is to build community so that young people grow up with dignity, with hope, and with joy. So we're a policy and advocacy organization. We also do some other things like our freedom schools in the summer. And so this fits into the just and caring communities and family stability and economic mobility portions of our policy.
Without further ado,
I will share a brief video now with a member of the Youth Advisory Board before turning it over to Andrea and her team here.
We attended the Youth Advisory Board conference, and someone brought up, and I had no idea what I'd do it. Nobody in the room had any idea what I'd do it. Had anybody working in ESSA? I hit one hand in the room went up. And then someone explained the amount of people in the room that were like, I wish I would have had that. I needed that. I didn't have that. It's overwhelming, the amount of people that were like, that's insane that we're supposed to have that. We don't. Activist mediator, I went straight to my boy park and I said, when you're supposed to have this and we don't have it, I was right aware and I am key advocate in this book. I'm president of the Mental Health Advisory Board. I want to mention about foster kids, and statistically, foster kids are more likely to be involved because they don't get that ever in line for long. I never felt like they were fans. And I felt more so like my counselor was my family. She was like, oh, second mom, and my class teacher was a playground mom, or needed trauma training, she needed training on foster care and policy. She needed to know resources for when and how to get out. It need be if the foster kid ain't closed, it's been up a high deposit. And when the youth have voting, they're from the school because when I didn't have anyone to do for new school, I almost failed sophomore year. I switched schools in the middle of the year and I didn't have the knowledge that everybody else had in my new school. Whenever, if I did get some help, there was no opportunity for that. Nobody understood that foster kids were probably going to need that. And I wish that there was because I got my first C in my life. You usually don't stay in your own town. So you're going to a new city, a new school. You don't know which way to go and there's nobody coming to you. If I need to lecturing and a job that I end up going into by almost the whole unit, and I will know it. And I'm the real thing later in life and get the support. I need a system. You're looking to come in the school, but you're thinking no initiative and you're losing the key things they need. They need that one person because mental health decline, race decline, attendance decline. We are not getting the education, the research, and because nobody's reaching out to foster kids in a new area, a new surrounding. We're not going to be able to reach out ourselves when a foster kid's in school and they need the direction, sending records. They need. I know for a fact that when you are a foster child placed in a new district, you probably within the school system as a foster child placed in a district that for the information for the school. I know that they know you are foster kids. They need to be making things. You need to come to you and ask, what do you need? What were you working on? What's the last thing you remember? If somebody would have asked me that and they would have found out where it was in their curriculum, I could have learned everything. Taking on an ESSA role, you have got to be dedicated. You got to understand what being an ESSA is. Being an ESSA is advocating for foster kids. I need transportation. If they need to talk to their caseworker during school, they need to figure out their classes, they need help in a class. You need to be the advocate for them. You need to be trained on how to properly respond to a foster kid, especially one with heavy trauma, such as sexual abuse, child abuse. Training is definitely mandatory, and they should always be an ESSA in every school because foster kids need a lot, especially when it comes to school. You're in a whole new one, trying to adapt a whole new school, and you don't know these people, you don't know the teachers, not being able to approach authority and ask for help, because when we haven't asked for help or approach authority, it's never been good. And the trauma response, and they need to be trained in that and know that they need to initiate and be the leader for kids. We're not supposed to be the leader, we're not supposed to figure out everything in a new school, so especially in the corporate. You need somebody in the school, especially when school becomes your safe place, because the school becomes your safe place, you need somebody to play the parent role and be your support. They need to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. They need to advocate for the things that you need when you can't advocate for you. When I was homeless, my counselor, after 2.5 months, they were finally like, okay, we can get you a bus pass. But it took 2.5 months to realize I couldn't make it. But it's studying things when I've done, and so there were 2.5 months of this organization during my senior year, with peak year, to realize that something's going on with me already being a proper kid and having to have these meetings about plans of action for my education because I have missed some things that are missing credits and I've had to redo classes. Or there was a recognized problem and I had gotten support that I needed. My GPA was down to 1.2. I hadn't been to school in 2.5 months. So my counselor reached out to me and said, you need to come to school. We need to figure something out. I came to school and we sat down in the song and we figured out the plan abroad, the makeup, everything so that it didn't hurt my record. She figured out the bus pass for me to get to and from school. She took me off campus to lunch and we brought a breather away from school. Sometimes it's not easy to talk about things in a school setting when you have to go back to class and you have to go learn fractions afterwards. She nominated me for the Accepting the Sound of Excellence Award, and I ended up winning it with a similar scholarship for Accepting the Sound of Excellence of overcoming every hurdle, but for the finish line and graduate. I did graduate with a 4.0 GPA, and I had too many skills to fill my diploma. When supported, we can stop, and especially as foster kids. I was grateful for the support that came through at the end of my senior year to help me finish. I had to go find that support, and that support should come from me. So that support is mandatory.
She was outspoken in a way that I could never have possibly been as a high school student. And I am so grateful for people who have that kind of vision for how things could be. And I think with Andrea, we are going to learn a lot about how we are actually helping that vision come to pass.
Andrea Summers serves as the Educational Partnership for Social, Emotional, and Academics Program Manager. She brings more than 25 years of experience as an educator and administrator in schools, out-of-school time, and experiential learning programs. She is driven by a deep commitment to ensure all youth, especially the most vulnerable, have the support they need to succeed academically and thrive as they transition into adulthood. Andrea holds a master's in nonprofit management with a concentration in education policy from the New School in New York City and a BA from Antioch College in sociology and anthropology with a focus on education. And she's joined today with 2 members of her team, EPSEA program educational support coordinators, Stevie Brown and Joy Medlock. We're thrilled to welcome all of you, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for having us. As Julia said, I'm Andrea, the program manager for EPSEA. I'm very excited to share what EPSEA does. I am a former liaison, and we'll walk through what our program model is. When I served as a liaison, I really quickly saw the impact that I was able to make through asking the right questions, bringing the right people together, and working with students to build their social emotional learning capacity, centering on their academic success. I quickly saw the outcomes and the fruits of those labors. It was very powerful. EPSEA is a program that I care deeply about, and I'm very excited and thankful to be co-presenting here with Stevie Brown and Joy Medlock. They are powerhouses, particularly around all things education in ESSA. I'll talk about our program model and set that program model in the landscape of education as it applies to foster youth. And then I'm going to turn it over to them to share how and what ESSA is and what it does for kiddos. Maddie in her video certainly teed us up well today. Hats off to Maddie. Wanted to ground our discussion in why EPSEA matters in the national data. Our kiddos face persistent educational challenge when they're in foster care. More than half of youth in care experience at least one school change when they're in care. You heard Maddie say in her video, her disrupted friendships, her trusted adults at school, and the continuity of her experience, her safe space. So when they have to move, there are social emotional losses that impacts the next data point, academic learning loss. You're stepping into a new school and they could be in a different curriculum or a different portion of the curriculum from where you left off. Not to mention there could be a gap in enrollment from the time you're moving from one school to the next. Also, our kiddos in foster care have a lot of educational difficulties, no fault of their own. Oftentimes have special education, mostly as a result of trauma. Behavior challenges result as a result of that trauma as well. And then that impacts long-term outcomes as well. So we see that 55 to 60% of youth actually graduate school on time. 85% of kiddos in foster care will graduate, but with extended time. So this data point is really looking at within that 4-year graduation window, only 50 to 60% of kiddos will graduate on time. And you can go to the next slide. And so this is why I love EPSEA. It's because our long-term data really supports why we are closing the gap on those national data numbers. You'll see here on the left, this is our data from 2020 all the way through 2025, showing that our kiddos are matriculating to the next grade, and we see that number continuing to grow. We see, as compared to national rates of 57%, Ohio's number for graduation rates for foster youth in care, as compared to EPSEA's 98% rate of graduation. All of our kiddos, 80% of them will make academic gains. And this is some of the work we're most proud of, that every student succeeds at. Those best interest determinations that Maddie spoke about the importance of, is that a lot of our kiddos will go through a bid process. So who is EPSEA? We are situated at the ESC of Central Ohio as the education provider for Franklin County Children's Services, and they fund our work 100%. I like to think about it as Children's Services takes care of safety. EPSEA steps in and takes care of the educational needs. Over time, the priority of education at the agency has grown exponentially. Now there's even a department at the agency, research and education supports, headed by Tanina Seagraves, because they understand the value and importance of educational success. EPSEA serves about 350 students annually through direct and individualized supports. But as you'll hear Stevie and Joy share, there are hundreds more. Last year, they served 700 unique kiddos at the agency, locally and across the state. We are in 150 schools, about 16 different school districts, and we see our kiddos in 29 different charter, private, tech schools, special education schools here in Franklin County. We here at EPSEA serve primarily children's services, intake, ongoing adoptions, units over at the agency. Here's how EPSEA does what it does. 4 arms of EPSEA under the umbrella. So I'll start with our educational liaisons, and that's the heart blood of our work. That's working one-on-one with kids in care. We support their social emotional learning development as the lever to boost their academic behavior and attendance success. And lastly, our educational liaisons, particularly with the support of Stevie Brown and Joy Medlock, we're advocating and we're stepping into those special education meetings and those manifestation meetings to make sure that our kiddos are getting the best outcomes possible. We also have a team of folks who are in this family support liaison. Now, those are liaisons who are supporting families while they maintain custody. However, they are connected to the agency and get case management support. That's what you will hear referred to as voluntary opens. You'll hear it referred to as a temporary order, a court order. custody agreements. We have supports at that layer, particularly if there's an educational component that the family and the child need support with. We also support at the intake department. So when that call comes into the hotline or the warm line, there is an educational consultant who can assist. Hey, what's going on with this kiddos? There's truancy, there's McKinney-Vento and homelessness. We have a coordinator who can step in, guide the family through the processes they need help with, and quickly close the case. They have a case open around 30 to 45 days on average. And lastly, the biggest arm, the most volume that runs through our program happens with our educational support coordinators, Joy and Stevie. They're going to support that Every Student Succeeds Act, but then they also provide educational consults. Not only child welfare is a complex system, but educational schools and navigating those spaces are very complex as well. So that's a big picture overview of what we do here at EPSEA. We're setting goals with kiddos. We're making sure they're getting their assignments in and that they know how to track missing assignments or what grades they have. We're helping them think about self-awareness when the teacher might say something that triggers them a little bit. How are they going to recognize that's happening in their body and what's their response going to be? This is centered around attendance success as well, because you can't practice your behavior strategies or succeed in your classes if you're not at school. So this is the narrow focus that we bring to this EPSEA educational work through 3 ways. We do that through social emotional learning, collaboration, and advocacy to make sure our kids are getting what they need. Our family support liaisons, as I shared, they're working with our TOPS and COPS and voluntary opens, centering in on the families. What's going on? What questions do you have? How can we help you be a better school partner? We will meet occasionally with kiddos and helping ensure their success. I was just doing site visits, and our liaison, Megan Ehrenstein, was visiting with a student. She wasn't attending school. She was getting all Fs, and Megan sat down with her and helped her make plans and to-do list and understand her value and her worth. And while I was in the site visit, I heard a child say to Megan, I didn't realize until you opened my eyes what potential that I had. And I'm really motivated and I see what I can do when I can do it. I was deeply moved to hear her share that with Megan, and I hope Megan felt it as well. This family support liaison does hold a special opportunity for those families to stay together, but still get that extra support. And EPSEA comes alongside the agency to focus on that education. I talked about that intake, right? When that education neglect call is coming into the agency, we have a coordinator who can walk alongside those service teams and those families to understand the complex needs in the educational system. Last year, our coordinator, Kim Mayer, had 180 cases that she supported over a year. Tremendous numbers.
Joy and I are educational support coordinators. We facilitate all of the best interest determinations under ESSA federal law. We also provide educational consultations for youth in custody when it comes to special ed, discipline, enrollment, and any other educational needs. ESSA stands for the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's been around since about 2016. It promotes stability for the children educationally. It shifts the focus to what is in the best interest of the child, where they should be attending school, where those supports are, and improve outcomes academically, socially, and emotionally. Best interest determination, which we call a BID, it begins when the child enters placement and or changes placement to a new kinship home or foster care home. By law, this BID needs to be completed within 5 days. And we listen to the youth when we're making this decision. It is a collaborative discussion. The school district of origin, where the youth is attending, as well as the future school district where the youth is placed, along with the service team and any adults who know the child well, are involved in this collaborative discussion. ESSA says that the youth should stay in their current school until this BID is completed. We like to see these youth stay in their current school, their school of origin, because we know that relationships are built there and they have the supports already in place. But there are some times when it's not doable. Factors that go into this collaborative discussion: reasonable distance. current grades, classes, when you're looking at the high school kiddos, their credit accumulation, and time of year. We look at the time of the year. Right now, we really don't want kids to move. They're in testing. We want them to finish their testing, finish off their classes where they are. So at this time of the year, we want them to stay where they're at. We look at special education needs, positive school relationships, the school climate, the peer support, any supportive adults that are in the school system. We look at extracurricular activities that they might be involved in. We want them to stay connected that way. We don't want them to have to move to a new district and learn new coaches. And then we ask about what's the reunification plan and that timeline. So those are all aspects that we look at when we are doing the BIDs. The formula for success for advancing the ESSA outcomes.
We had the honor and privilege of being tasked to collaborate with Children's Services to create what our ESSA process looks like today, 7 years later. It took a year to create the process. You have to have a process in order to be successful. What we came up with was outlined in law as well, but every school district and every child welfare agency has to have a designee. So you get to know each other really well, and relationships are absolutely key in collaboration between Stevie and I, our school district partners, and our FCCS, especially caseworkers and supervisors. It is a highly collaborative process, and we bring everyone together to have these conversations with that student voice being the most prominent. If we feel that it is in that child's best interest to school districts, then we reach out to the district rep as well, and we all have a conversation about what is in that child's best interest. It's always been that we continuously educate and train, and that has been the mantra since I started the work. Stevie and I, we call them our roadshows, and our goal is to meet with all layers at Children's Services, caseworkers up to administrators early and often. When I started, ESSA was still new in school districts. So I was actually educating folks in school districts as well. This is a set of federal laws and there has to be compliance. Relationships with school district are key. Stevie and I know the foster care liaisons very well. We have wonderful relationships with them. Between the adult parties here, the law says there can be no barriers to enrollment. Then we work to secure transportation through two folks that work at Children's Services. Since the inception of this work and of this role, Franklin County Children's Services has been a bit of an outlier because the commitment immediately was we will transport children one way, and not every agency chooses to be that generous. I've always been incredibly proud of the fact that Franklin County Children's Services has said that transportation will not be a barrier. So almost 100% of the time, what works out is, if necessary, to maintain school stability, which ESSA law says that school stability is by default the outcome, unless there is a really good reason for that kiddo to start in a new school district. They shall remain in that school of origin. Then transportation gets worked out between the district and the agency. Stevie and I are very serious about this ESSA work. We're very serious about supporting stability for kids in school in a timely manner without barriers. Collaboration and those relationships are absolutely key. And we pride ourselves on constantly communicating with not only our school partners, but our internal partners at Children's Services. And we're really proud of the work that we all do together, and we absolutely are committed to fidelity every day. As far as data tracking, we have a mamma jamma of a spreadsheet. Everything that we do goes on that spreadsheet, and right now we are at about 2,500 entries, lines of data, and I will say that is about twice the pace that we were at last year on the state. So it's a big job, and we take it very seriously. And our commitment is to stability for our kids in care and to alleviating those barriers with strong collaborations, both internally and externally. We couldn't do it without one another.
You pulled this from the ODEW site. It's a flow chart for when kids come into care and how the BID process works. And it takes you through that. And I think you can find this on the ODEW site. Joy and I do this every day, multiple times a day. So we have our process. We know the process very quickly and we know our partners, but that flow chart will help for those of you that are unfamiliar. There is a best interest determination form that takes you and how to start the conversation with the school districts and so forth. Some school districts that aren't familiar with best interest determinations do like to use this kind of as an outline. This is also on ODEW. It's Ohio Foster Care Student Checklist. That's handy if you need it sometimes as well.
We just wanted to provide you with some ESSA-specific resources to support you in thinking about the implementation of a process for ESSA, whether in your districts or in your child welfare agency.
We'd love to hear any feedback, any questions. Stevie and I love questions. We are very passionate about what we do and supporting others as everybody works to surround our kids and knock down those barriers. So how can we help you today?
Thank you so much. You mentioned that there's like 100 or 350 students that are in EPSEA, but then you reach 700. So what's the process for bringing a student into the program? And is it based on the need or?
I'll just quickly do my best to answer that, Kim, which is that there are kiddos and families. Some of them are custody kids. They have been removed from their homes. Those are the families and the kiddos that we're supporting that get to that 350 number. On the other side, whether it's intake or family, those are prior to removal or maybe circumventing removal because we're helping address an issue to support the family's success.
Prevention.
What
This
is
is really
Stevie?
the first time we've heard about a prevention aspect.
They really have grown the work.
I was really struck by the data that you shared about how your outcomes are going up and up each year. And I was curious how you set goals for that and how you work to make sure you're continuously improving the program.
It's a great question, Julia. We're always thinking about those exact questions. How do we grow our numbers? Data informs that practice when we can track and monitor. What are those educational gains? So we're tracking consistently and we're able to identify, for example, attendance continues to be a significant issue. So we're going to move a little bit more into some attendance, professional development and learning next year, for example. Ultimately, we understand that every child needs to have social emotional learning in order to succeed. It's a human practice. So that surrounds everything that we do. So we are always refining our practice on how to support that emotional recognition growth, self-management skills in order to support success, how you're communicating and advocating for yourself. It keeps us motivated and growing because we're always thinking about how are we monitoring data to know that we're making these gains? What gaps are we identifying so we know where we need to pivot and continue to grow? Do many schools in Franklin County have a designated person that works with children in foster care in their buildings? I'm going to throw that back to the group instead of me.
That's a House bill question because we know that House bill is saying every building needs to have someone that works with kids in care. As far as the ESSA work that Stevie and I do, our partners are at a higher level than the building level. So we work with every school district has an ESSA liaison and they are found at ODEW. There's a spreadsheet of those folks and Stevie and I are on there, but there's the ESSA contact for every school district is there's a designee. So right at this point, it is not building centric, district centric. But I think that the new House bill is going to change that. And then they're going to have somebody at every building.
How do you think that'll change your work at a day-to-day level?
I think it'll enrich it. I think collaboration is key and communication is key. So my concern is that there's not money in districts to create a new role at each building. That's expensive. We know personnel is the greatest expense, right? So I think there's going to be someone already in a role, a school counselor, a school social worker, or an assistant principal, because that's open to interpretation. But my concern is that someone's going to be tasked that's already really busy. We know that not every school building even has a child in care, right? Some have quite a few. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the building response is to that. But the more supportive adults that kiddos have in their lives, I think the better the outcome. And the greater the accountability too, right? Because a lot of this is about accountability.
Theoretically, is correct.
And in some ways, it's almost giving a window into who is in foster care to an additional person who might not have known that and might not have been given the right to know that. It's like that would be opening up the potential for them to intervene, and they would have liked to, but didn't know how or wouldn't necessarily have had access to that. So I think it's almost giving permission to lend more support from that angle.
To me,
There'd be
it's
a lot
about-
of privacy issues.
Not if that child is already enrolled. These kids are foster flagged at the district. So every school building can filter, and they should absolutely know who those children are in their building, because to me, that then points to equity. And I've done this long enough that when I started there, equity wasn't a given for kids in foster care. When I started, the districts or the buildings didn't think that children's services was doing enough for kids, and children's services caseworkers didn't think buildings were doing enough to support kids. There's been enormous growth over the past 7 or 8 years. There's been enormous growth in saying, hey, this is collaborative. We are all here for the same reason, and that is to support these kids. And it's not an us versus them not doing enough. You're not doing enough. It's how can we come together to support our kids?
How do you connect with students who may not want to be known as an identity of being a foster kid? I mean, how do you have an impact without reinforcing stigma?
I would say, honestly, the majority of kids that we work with are happy to have the support, and building relationships with a vast majority of our kiddos is pretty seamless. For kiddos that maybe anger, hurt, they don't want to be identified. I've had some kiddos who are like, man, I want to be in class. I'm eager to do my math. I want to lock in. So we respond based on their response. Okay, we're just checking in. What do you need? Then we'll do our behind the scenes work, checking the grades, relaying information back to the agency. So we will honor what our kiddos have to say in that process. Some kiddos, they'll say, I don't want to repeat my story, or it might take a little longer. Once we demonstrate, hey, we're here for you. Here's what we can help you with. We work for you. They open up a lot more and are very receptive. That is few and far between. They're a small percentage of what we experience at EPSEA. We're trained in trauma. We're trained in how to build relationships. And so that's how we're going to enter those spaces to mitigate their resistance and to help them relax into the supports that are available to them.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Can't thank you enough for your insights and time today. We look forward to seeing you next time.